Hello, and welcome to the Ultimate Strategy Podcast, your go-to podcast for everything strategy. Each week, we'll share a new episode covering a wide range of topics designed to help your business grow smarter by making strategy both approachable and actionable. I'm Laura Blackmore, Head of Strategy Execution at Cascade.
And I'm Devina Patel, and I am a Strategy Execution Director at Cascade. Hello, everybody. We are super excited to have you with us today. We are getting into a favorite topic of mine, which is chocolate. So you'll see in just a sec who we'll be speaking about. But before we dive in, let me thank today's sponsor, Cascade. Now, Cascade is the #1 strategy execution platform. Cascade helps to turn visions into reality by working as the strategic brain of your organization. Thousands of top organizations use Cascade to plan, execute, and track their strategies in one place. And this really means that they can improve efficiency and speed up decision-making. By successfully executing their strategies, Cascade customers are making a difference, from deploying life-saving vaccines to engineering the fastest Formula One car. So if you want to get your team moving towards your one vision and one central platform, please check out Cascade at www.cascade.app. We will be leaving the link in today's show notes. Now, let's get started, Laura. Let's get going with today's topic.
Let's do it. Today, we are diving into Cadbury's. If you haven't heard of Cadbury's, I don't know where you have been. I know I have lots of Cadbury's chocolate downstairs left over from Christmas, so making me a bit hungry, this podcast. Cadbury's is a name synonymous with chocolate and a brand beloved across the globe. But Cadbury's is more than just dairy milk and cream eggs. Behind the sweetness lies a fascinating strategy that's helped the brand evolve from a small family business in 1824 to one of the most recognized names in confectionery. From its Quaker roots to its bold advertising campaigns, which we'll talk about later, do a bit of nostalgia, go down a bit of memory lane. But that global reach, Cadbury's has mastered the art of staying relevant in a competitive industry, a hugely competitive industry. And let's unwrap the story one bite at a time. Devina, why don't you kick us off with the origins?
Of course. So Cadbury's story actually begins, as Laura said, in 1824, which is a long time ago. And it actually began in Birmingham in the UK, in England. So actually a town very local to my hometown, Leicester. And a gentleman called John Cadbury opened up a grocery store. And he started selling cocoa and drinking chocolate, or hot chocolate. Now, as a Quaker, John Cadbury believed in promoting health and social good. And these values actually would end up shaping the brand in years to come. Now, fast forward to the next century in 1905, and Cadbury's introduced its now famous dairy milk chocolate. Now, this was marketed as having a glass and a half of milk in every bar, and you'll see that comes up throughout its campaigns. But this wasn't just a tagline, it was a promise of quality, positioning Cadbury's as that premium chocolate brand. Now, you can definitely get into this rabbit hole, in sidelines to this podcast, but the world of chocolate and cocoa is fascinating in terms of quality and efficacy of chocolate. And honey is another similar kind of product. There's so much to it in terms of the origination of the cacao beans, the processing of them, and then also the contents. So really demonstrating that chocolate had this contents of genuine milk really demonstrated and set it apart, especially in that day and age. So leadership also played a huge role for them. And Richard and George Cadbury, the second generation of leaders, really pioneered employee welfare. So they built Bournville, which you'll be familiar with, one of their dark chocolate brands, was actually a village for their workers. So you can Google Bournville, Birmingham, and you'll see it. You'll see it in some of the images. And this progressive approach wasn't just philanthropy. It actually built brand loyalty and reinforced Cadbury's reputation as a company that cared about the products, cared about employees, and cared about customers. But it also lies in the brand that they've created. So maybe, Laura, you want to touch on the power of their branding?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And if you are so close to it, and anyone who's listening in the UK, if you haven't been to Cadbury's World, it's actually a super fun day out.
It is.
Especially around learning the heritage, but also getting to taste all of the chocolate, see how it's made. And this is just part of their branding, ethos. They want to bring that emotional connection. They want people to see where Cadbury truly shines and really expose how their operation really works. So let's talk about it a little bit. I think one of Cadbury's iconic moves was embracing the color purple. That color purple, that's the brand we think of. That purple and gold packaging, which hasn't really changed too much over the last century. It's become synonymous with luxury, with indulgence, and really distinguishes it from its competitor. But their genius wasn't really just in the visual branding. It's how the brand created emotional connection. You've got their advertising campaigns like the unforgettable glass and a half, or wouldn't it be nice if the world was chocolate, leaned heavily into that nostalgia, the happiness, the togetherness, also a little bit of the healthiness, getting the calcium through the milk in the chocolate and really going down that using the quality of the chocolate as a mechanism to spark branding. And then there's a gorilla advert. Do you remember that? You got the gorilla. The gorilla drumming to Phil Collins in the air tonight. It was bizarre. It was unexpected, and it was instantly iconic. It really takes you back. I think it was in the 90s potentially, if I'm getting the memory right. But that campaign wasn't about chocolate. It was actually about joy, and it worked. It won multiple awards. It drove sales despite not really having a heavy product promotion. And I think the shift from that product-based marketing to more experience-driven storytelling, it's the nostalgia, it's the luxury, that has been the hallmark of their strategy, certainly over the last couple of decades. But, their success isn't just in the UK. Why don't you walk us through how their global expansion has taken off?
So I think this is always one of our favorite kind of perspectives to really look at with a global brand is how they've achieved that, right? How they've taken their local success beyond. So Cadbury really didn't stop at the UK, right? The company quickly expanded its footprint. It entered markets like India, Australia, and even countries across the African nation, adapting its products and strategies to local tastes. So take India, for example. When Cadbury actually entered the market, chocolate was considered a very, very premium luxury for children and a real treat in that market. So Cadbury actually changed the narrative by positioning chocolate as something that could be enjoyed by all ages and on all occasions. It wasn't just this one-time thing or particularly for children. They actually had specific campaigns as well tied to chocolate consumption, to celebrations and daily moments, creating an entirely new category for Indian consumers. And it made the notion of having chocolate much more approachable and realistic for consumers that previously might have not been able to access that. And then I take South Africa as an example. Now, Cadbury actually focused on affordability there, introducing smaller sized SKUs or chocolates to reach more consumers. And by tailoring its strategy to different cultures, Cadbury achieved that global dominance without diluting its brand essence. Something you'll also see across the world as you travel is that there are specific SKUs and limited editions that are just for that market. So often I know when I'm in a grocery store abroad, I'll be checking out what kind of things that they have there, right? And you'll see that the Cadbury items or the sub-brands are actually very different globally. And that's to really cater towards these different tastes. Another thing that they've done really well in their global expansion is still maintain their heritage of being a truly British brand. And that Western perspective actually can resonate really well in emerging markets, is they see some of these Western brands as something to really look forward to and aspire towards. But like every great brand, that doesn't mean that there haven't been any challenges. So maybe, Laura, you could talk us through some of their difficulties.
Yes, absolutely. I think we'll all be familiar that about a decade and a half ago in 2010, Cadbury was actually acquired by Kraft Foods, now Mondelez International, in a controversial $19 billion takeover. This acquisition led to fears of cost-cutting, reduced quality, and really challenge their reputation. Of course, we all know that they started out as a family business, as a quality, high milk led chocolate product. But of course, the being acquired by a conglomerate such as Mondelez really shook the fears around where the direction of the company was going to go. And I think alongside that, they also faced criticism over the sourcing of the cocoa. There were concerns about child labor, sustainability, and that really pushed Cadbury to adopt certifications like Fair Trade and launch its Cocoa Life program to ensure ethical sourcing and community support in the cocoa growing regions, which of course is an incredible reaction to those challenges. But despite these hurdles, they have had an ability to address the issues. They've been very transparent. And I think that's helped them maintain the trust with consumers. I can't really think of a moment in my memory where I felt like Cadbury's was declining. I think they've really maintained this sustainable growth. And I think that brand and that trust and transparency has really resonated throughout the years. And I think, going back to the different brands that you see, actually one of my favorite things, I don't eat a lot of chocolate, to be honest, but probably every year I really like to get the Australian version of their chocolates, because there's a couple in there that we don't get over here. And I think, maybe that was actually by design. Maybe that was to increase the demand. But there's a couple of others that are specific to like the island region that you can get. You're starting to get in the UK now, but it's one of those things. It's like when you can't get it, you kind of want it more. And maybe that strategy was by design.
It's true. Laura, you made me think of the fact that we have Freddos, the frogs, and they have koalas. In Australia. And then I'm thinking of the African version of Astros, the Cadbury's Astros, but we have like competing brands in Smarties. They kind of have different variations. But you'd be surprised how many lengths or how much effort people go to acquire products from different nations. We're talking about Cadbury's here, but I know people do the same thing for like Coca-Cola, who have these crazy flavors elsewhere.
That's right.
So I totally hear you. There's something special about these international flavors, and maybe
because we can't have them.
Yeah,
we want them.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe there's something there, right? They've actually continued to innovate, Laura. Right? They've stayed ahead of the curve, and they've launched, of course, seasonal favorites like cream eggs, but then they've also created limited edition aspects. So they've got their Oreo collaborations throughout a lot of their SKUs and ranges now, which is fantastic. I'm a particular Oreo fan. But they've also expanded into other formats. So now you'll actually see that you'll find something like a dairy milk spread, dairy milk ice creams, which are also very good, Oreo ice creams. And so they've really actually tried to go cross subcategory as well and expand just away from chocolate bars too. And they've embraced digital marketing, which has obviously been a big evolution since the days of the 1800s. They leverage social media to connect with audiences, and campaigns like Cadbury Secret Santa in the UK.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's a fantastic. And they encourage people to gift chocolates anonymously. And it's through this digital tool website that you can go on. And it's all around this concept of giving and actually going back to the branding side of things. It's moving away from just, having a piece of chocolate. It's really about the experience that you share with your loved ones as well when you do so. And their partnership with Mondelez has actually allowed Cadbury to experiment with newer technologies, newer things behind the scenes like augmented reality, creative, interactive experiences that maybe before the acquisition, they might not have had the power and scale to do. So I think what we can think about in kind of summary is probably a few key lessons from Cadbury's strategy. First, emotional branding works. Cadbury consistently taps into that universe of emotions, joy, nostalgia, and love to connect with customers. And maybe, Laura, what are the other kind of lessons that we can learn?
I think obviously global expansion we talked about quite a lot, and I think it's not it's not just as easy as taking your product to a new market. You actually have to adapt. You have to adapt to their cultures, their ways of working, what's going to resonate with them, kind of like the smaller bars in areas where they might not have a lot of disposable income, or hot countries where you have to actually tailor like the melting point of the chocolate bars, which we didn't touch on. But I think also tastes. I know in the US they tend to have more of a sweet taste, and I know when you eat in the US, it tends to be much sweeter than it would be in the UK because of the ingredients. So I think Cadbury tailoring its messaging and its products to resonate with those different cultures has certainly served them well. What else would you say?
So I think one theme that you can clearly see is that they've committed to quality, and ethics as being one of their guiding principles. They've maintained their high standards, even under big corporate ownership, right? They want to keep the Cadbury's reputation intact. And even, you talked about Cadbury's World and Bourneville, even keeping that going, right? I mean, sure, a corporate could have sold it away, right? Think about it as a big cost-heavy machine, but actually they've kept that going. They want to keep the brand story there, and ultimately what they are doing is keeping this brand around for a very, very long time. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Definitely. And I think, even on that, I can imagine in the future, maybe they'll innovate to some sort of, theme park or something.
My gosh.
You can really see them evolving and innovating, but without losing their identity and staying with that core message of indulgence and happiness. So I'm intrigued to see what's going to be next for Cadbury's, I think.
Me too.
But I think to conclude, Cadbury's story is one of resilience, innovation, understanding the human experience, whether it's a dairy milk bar shared amongst friends or families, or a cream egg savoured in solitude. I will definitely be getting a cream egg soon. I absolutely love them. It's a bit early. Normally have them around the April time, but I think I have to get one today. Cadbury's has built a brand that transcends borders and generations. And I've really enjoyed this episode. I'd love, if our listeners can give us some of your favorite brands. I think, I'm inspired to actually do one on Tony's Chocolonely next. They're an incredible chocolate brand, very different. That could be interesting. But yeah, any brands that you love and would find insightful for us to do a debrief on, and it'll help you on your journey to better strategy execution. We'd love to hear about it.
Of course. And make sure to tune in to next week's episode 2. We'll be talking about another exciting topic too.
Awesome. Well, in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode. Also, check out the links to our website that we mentioned. Tell us what you want to hear about next. And a big thank you to our sponsor, Cascade, for making this podcast possible.
Thanks for listening. And remember that great strategies are only as good as their execution.
Take action, make it happen, and see the results. See you in the next episode of your weekly dose of strategy. Yeah, that was fun.